That pulled up a little bit lame on that one there. Started to feel a bit of a twinge in the throat. Wanted to, protect myself. Had to say, okay, we got a nice hour-long recording session to go here. Don't want to mess up the throat in the first 10 seconds with the greeting, which I'm sure some of you don't really like all that much because it's me screaming into a microphone, more or less. How you doing, folks? Come on in and turn it up. It's the Weekly Trim with yours, Beardly, the one and only Redbeard. Or at least the only guy who calls himself Redbeard for the next 10 square miles or so. How you doing, folks? Good to have you back on the show here. Appreciate you continuing to support the program and the channel. Like we said, this is the Rasslin with Redbeard YouTube channel. Unless you're joining us by one of our new affiliate applications, that being Anchor.fm, Spotify, or a number of other big-time providers of that nature. We've always sort of heralded YouTube as our primary platform, and we'll continue to do so because there's a lot of other stuff that we do here other than just the podcast. But we wanted to give people an opportunity to enjoy the show in just an audio format, because in some cases, like if you're at work or whatever, YouTube may be blocked. Spotify, Anchor.fm, other applications may not be. So in order to make sure that as many people as possible can hear this show, we now have an association with Anchor.fm. Glad to be with them. It's a great service. I've been enjoying it thus far. We've got all of our episodes from this year, all from 2020 on there. Not sure if I'm going to upload the ones from the past yet or not, but we do have everything from this year uploaded to Anchor, and we're really just, rocking and rolling at this point in time and getting the show to as many potential ears as possible. And we really appreciate you guys continuing to enjoy the program, participate by the way of likes, shares, comments, subscriptions, whole 9 yards there, all that stuff that us YouTubers and online personalities, influencers, whatever the hell you want to call us, are supposed to beg you guys for. And this is the August 10th, 2020 edition of the program. And, I'm always a pretty chipper individual. I typically like to think I'm a positive individual. I like to think that I have a good attitude for the majority of the time. Not to say that there aren't, the things that I encounter that they'll set me off here and there. And I'm going to talk about one of those that I experienced here recently later on in the show. But I got to be honest in talking about something that happened here today, and I've pulled the curtain back a few times before in these recent episodes where I've said, I record these episodes a couple days in advance. It gives me a chance to edit them all together, to get the music right, to do anything that may need to be done in order to put some polish on these things, or as much polish as I'm capable of producing anyway. I'll never go into any type of claim to being a end-all be-all when it comes to editing or whatnot. I've got some free software that I have patched together to allow me to record this thing, and it does a fairly good job of that. And the editing software is about as basic as can get, but still, I'd like to think that I'm a pretty, even-tempered guy for the most part. But something happened here earlier today that I just, I was very unhappy about. I was very upset with myself after it happened because it was something that was unnecessary, and it's something that I regret and whatnot. My wife and I got into an argument, and you're going to sit there and say, oh, well, couples argue all the time. What's the big deal? It happens. She and I, our relationship, the genesis of it was very interesting because whenever I moved to where we were at that point in time. We were living, or I was living, I should say, in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I had moved down to take a job, and I had gotten to a point where I said, you know what, the dating scene here is kind of ridiculous because I had no real chance of meeting anyone in that area. So I said to myself, okay, well, let's try the online thing. Let's just see where it goes. And I had a couple of interesting dates. Some very nice young ladies responded to some of the ads that I'd put out there, and it led to some interesting things. I will say that, but at the same time, our relationship was a result of an online encounter. And it was, a very ideal thing, though, because we were both obviously interested in having a relationship. We had a good bit in common. The only thing was we were about an hour or so from each other in terms of the distance that was between us. She lived with her family up around the Kershaw, South Carolina area, Kershaw County, that is. She always gets on me because there's technically a Kershaw County and there's a town of Kershaw as well. She's from Kershaw County. I just name it that way. I can't help it. But she's from up in that part of the world. I had relocated down here to around Orangeburg. So there's about an hour distance between us. So we couldn't see each other necessarily every day. And this was back around 2008, 2009, when, things like Facebook Live and FaceTime, this, that, and the other, were still very much in the mind's eye of whoever the developers were behind this stuff. So we spent a lot of time on the phone. We would spend hours pretty much every night talking to each other. And that really, I think, strengthened our relationship in a lot of ways because we talked about everything. It didn't matter what it was. We talked about everything and anything. And we were, of course, honest with each other. So there was nothing that we had, to hide at all by the time we got married. We knew each other in and out. And, it was a great thing. I thought that it made for a very strong relationship. Some people said, oh, well, there's a reason why you guys never argue. You're not around each other all that often. But, that was kind of bullshit in my opinion because that's just, your way of stepping out of your own problems if you say something like that to someone. But, like I say, we talked for hours every night. We always enjoyed talking to each other. And I enjoyed being around her. I still enjoy being around her, obviously. But the little thing here came up today. It didn't ruin my whole day. It just left me feeling just plain crummy. Because I'll be the first to admit that it was an unnecessary scenario. And it was, just something that really reflects the fact that I hate arguing. I don't like to be in arguments. I don't like the feeling of the tension and the anxiety that come with an argument. I guess because, I don't want to have to prove myself correct because in my mind, I don't want to have to belittle someone by saying, well, this is the actual thing going on here. It just, it is part of my personality to not want to engage. I would sooner us get along. I would sooner, in some way take a step back from whatever my goal might be in order to let you have a majority of what you want, so long as we can both move forward. And that's always been my opinion on things in general, because I realize, if I can get a bit of what I want, then, I could still be happy with that. I might not get 100% of what I was after, but hey, I got some. It's better than nothing. That's kind of been my MO and the way I've operated throughout my entire life. And somebody might say, oh, well, it's awful timid of you there, Redbeard, but it's just the way I lived. That's the way I kind of accepted things. I didn't have a problem with it. Still don't. But the situation here today, it involves something that, like I mentioned before, there's not a whole lot of times in my life where I've felt like I've had a poor attitude or been a generally angry person. That's not me in any way, shape, or form. I tend to be pretty positive. People have said before, well, what sets you off? I can't make you angry. There was one of the guys from one of the podcasts here a couple of years ago when we were talking about the Carolinas Professional Wrestling Awards with the Honest Podcast. They kept throwing these questions at me that were intended to sort of set me off. And they were like, why don't you ever get angry? Like, I just don't. It takes a lot to really piss me off. And, this was one of those things today where, to use the popular term of the day, it just left me triggered. I was triggered over what my wife said. and she had done, I should say, said, done, whole 9 yards. The situation was she had volunteered me to do something. And it wasn't a difficult something. It wasn't something that I would have had really any big challenge in doing. It was just the simple thought of, okay, well, I need you to give up part of your day, life, whatever, to do this thing that you may not actually want to do, but I volunteered you for it, so now you have to. And that's one of the things that really just, it irks me. And I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from the fact that my parents did it to me a lot as a kid. They would say, "Oh, well, Robert will be there to help you. Robert will do that. Robert will be there." And it was typically some kind of physical labor or whatnot, where it was like, "All right, he can do this. He's a big, strong kid. He can do it. Yeah, he'll be there." Well, you never thought to say, well, Robert might have wanted to do something else that day, or Robert might not have wanted to do that in the first place, or Robert might not have liked that person, and wanted to be around them or whatnot. Not that I don't have a problem helping people. Very much the opposite. Be glad to help anybody for the most part any way I can, unless you're some type of ne'er-do-well or child molester or some kind of thing along that nature. Then you can go pound sand and go to hell for that matter. But it's just the concept, I guess, is what irks me. To say, all right, well, you've got to give up some aspect of yourself because I said you were going to. And I think that's the problem there, is that it wasn't discussed with me. It wasn't said, okay, well, would you do this if I need this done? Can you take care of it in advance type of situation? It was just, okay, well, I volunteered you to do this. And that bothers me. It's like, well, I might have had other things going on. I might have had, some of the responsibility that is going to put me in a situation to where I'm in a bind over what you've asked me to do, because not only have you asked me to do it, you've also told me, oh, well, I was supposed to have told you about this a couple days ago, but it's due tomorrow. What? And, that might have been the bigger part of it there, is that it was not only that I got volunteered, but it was then suddenly, okay, well, you got to do this in the next 10 hours. What? I don't know what to do. I was just unprepared for it. I didn't expect it. So when she told me that, it set me off. And I didn't yell at her. I don't think I really fussed at her. But it was still one of those things where my response was not, oh, sure, honey, I'll get that done for you as soon as I can. It was more like, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that type thing. And I regret that, because in hindsight, the task that she had set before me was not something that was particularly difficult. It was not going to be a huge challenge. And it really wasn't as though I had that much going on today to where I couldn't have done that. And certainly, we're in the process of, telling more about what we're actually looking at in terms of when I'm recording the show. This is a sort of a Friday night, and tomorrow will be Saturday, and I'll have Sunday to work with as well. But the project would have been done tomorrow on the Saturday. So I would have had, realistically 10, 12 hours to get the thing done before somebody is going to be expecting it to be done. So it was like, you're putting me under the gun here, and I don't have anything up front to work with. So it was just this combination of things that really just irked me, and I responded poorly. I admit that, and I regret that as well. So I've apologized to her, and I'll continue to apologize, just because, again, I don't like to argue with my wife. I love my wife. I've put her through more things with some of the issues I've had here this year with my surgery and other stuff, that have come up in my life by virtue of things I've been associated with. That, other people, would they have hung around? Probably, but at the same time, it's just one of those deals to where I've always been able to count on and rely on her. And, I'd hate to think of doing anything that would endanger that. So I don't think I have. I don't think I'm so far in the woods here that, there's any permanent damage to our relationship. But it's just one of those things where I felt like I had to talk about it. Because, I like to be honest with you guys. I like to be upfront with what's going on in my life. And this was a major part of my day here. I didn't intend on talking about this when I did my show prep for this week here. I had some other things that I wanted to lead off with, but I had to get this out there because, I need to talk about things because it helps me to get them off my chest, to sort of expose the old heart and soul of Redbeard, so to speak. And for the life of me, I don't understand how some couples argue and bicker constantly. It really amazes me that some people could be in a relationship where, you have good days, but then a majority of them are spent in some way, shape, or form in an argument, or in some kind of a scenario where you both aren't happy. It really is amazing to think of that. But I can only hope to do better tomorrow, and I hope that tomorrow will be better in terms of me being the man and the husband that I need to be. So, if you're having relationship issues, try and work them out. Try and be honest with the one you love, because if you love them, if you genuinely love them, then you should be honest with them. You shouldn't be, one of these people who keeps things from your loved ones and whatnot. I've always, like I say, we've always talked in our relationship. We've always spent time talking to one another. We still do. We talk around the dining room table every day. A lot of times it's, things that have gone on during our work life, but we still talk to each other. And that's, I think that's an important, valuable part of any relationship, is that ability to communicate, and not to talk at each other. I'm talking about genuinely listening to what each other are saying and comprehending the needs that are being expressed. So if you're having, issues with your relationship and whatnot, I encourage you to talk and to see if that can be a source of progress, because it's helped us. And communication is really a vital thing, regardless of what kind of relationship you're talking about. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a friendship, love interest, even business and whatnot. The more you can communicate and be honest and open with people, the better things are going to work and flow. So that's just my 2 cents on that whole thing there. And I'm glad to be able to talk about that kind of thing on the show here. Not that I've done it frequently. It was, again, like I say, something that came up today, and something that I needed to get off the old chest here before we really moved on to other stuff here on the Weekly Trim with yours beardly, Redbeard. So all that having been said, we're going to take a break. We'll listen to some music here. Going to change the vibe as we go into segment 2 here, because, as I mentioned, there's been a few things that have set me off here recently. This segment was one of them. Segment 2 is a different ballpark entirely, but I'll be back in a few here to talk about that particular subject. Hang out with us, folks. Appreciate you being around. This is the Weekly Trim with yours beardly, Redbeard.
Choosing to be here right now. Hold on, stay inside this holy reality. This holy experience. Choosing to be here. twirling around with this familiar parable, spinning, weaving around each new experience. Recognize this as a holy gift and celebrate this chance to be alive and breathing. The chance to be alive and breathing.
Welcome back, gang. Glad to have you around. Glad to be with you again on this episode of the Weekly Trim, right here on the Rasslin Redbeard YouTube channel, also on Anchor.fm, Spotify, and a number of other great platforms as well. Want to get into something that's totally just really gotten on my nerves here. We've been talking, I think, pretty much every week here about something related to the ongoing pandemic as it relates to COVID-19, coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to continue that here today because, again, I mentioned in the first segment there that I didn't really intend to talk about an aspect of my personal relationship with my wife there. Well, I didn't intend to talk about this either, but it's something that I encountered here within the past day or so that really just absolutely put me into the stratosphere in terms of being pissed off with humanity as a whole. What I commonly do on a Friday evening, my wife has been going up to spend some time with her parents, my in-laws, of course. My son goes with them. So I'm kind of on my own here to do things of this nature. And what I do a lot of Friday evenings, most Friday evenings, matter of fact, is I'll go to our local grocery store and I'll pick up food for the weekend. I usually will pick up some types of protein, whatever vegetables I want to have go along with that. It's just something that I can do for myself to have a nice little, couple of meals there on the weekend. I don't like to, because I eat out so much during the week in terms of lunches. I have to grab stuff on the go very frequently there. I don't like to eat out on the weekend. If I can prep my own food and make my own food, I really just enjoy that a lot more than going out to eat all the time. People say, oh, well, why you got to clean up your kitchen and this, that, and the other. Well, if you know what you're doing, you don't have to clean up that much. realistically. If you know your way around your kitchen, you can get by with very minimal things. And I think I've gotten to that point, but that's besides what we're talking about here. Now I'll go to our local grocery store, which is the Piggly Wiggly here in St. Matthews, South Carolina. If you're from other parts of the world and you've never heard of a Piggly Wiggly, that's a grocery store. It's not like, Food Line or Lidl or Aldi or, Bilo. It's Piggly Wiggly. It's what we have. The store was a Bilo at one point in time. Then it closed for a period, and one of our local businessmen, who was actually the owner of a meat market, he said, "Okay, well, we'll reopen it. I'll buy it. We'll get the franchise back going again." But it came back as a Piggly Wiggly, so whatever. But I'll go in there and I'll get maybe a steak or some nice chicken, some sausage, whatever I feel like. And then I like Brussels sprouts. I like onions, mushrooms, squash, cabbage. Whatever I feel like getting, I'll get that, and I'll have my meals set up for the weekend because I enjoy cooking as well. I'm a foodie probably through and through, but regardless. Today, when I went in the store, I saw something that was just absolutely ghastly, in my opinion. And it goes in line with some of the stuff we've talked about here recently, in that it's good, sort of, in practice, but then it turns into a real huge mess when someone goes and does something foolish like this. What I saw was a pair of used latex gloves laying on the ground. Not just on the ground. This was within 5 feet of the door. This was within 5 feet of a trash can. And yet you've got a pair of what I assume to be used latex gloves on the ground. What the fuck? I'm going to go ahead and use the F-bomb right there. Okay, let's take a look here. For one, all right, to start off with, assuming that those gloves were put on at the moment you went to grab the buggy, and then, of course, taken off at the moment you returned the buggy to the stall, you've put this substance on the ground here that's contaminated with God knows what. So why did you leave it on the ground when there's a trash can literally within 5 paces of you? Why leave that on the ground as a literal biohazard, almost could be considered a bioweapon, to where someone else has got to come along and pick that up and throw it away? Now, I'm sure, Bilo probably, hopefully, has some type of, either they can even use a broom and a dustpan, but some type of thing to where a person wouldn't have to physically pick up the damn gloves. But still, I would hope that they have something of that nature. But just, the concept of having left that for someone else to have to deal with. How rude. How just plain revolting and ghastly can you be? Now, I'm not gonna pretend this is the first time I've encountered something of this nature, because Lord knows I've walked through parking lots at concert venues and other places that I've been in my life where I've seen everything from dirty diapers to used hypodermic needles to, spent condoms. I hate to say it, but I've seen all of it, and it doesn't make it any better that this is just a pair of rubber gloves. But the fact of the matter is, you're talking about the potential exposure to a virulent disease that is killing people right now, and you're leaving it there for someone to potentially deal with. Why? There is no justification whatsoever for someone to do that. I'm the type of person who, I can't stand a litter bug to begin with. That's one of the things that just absolutely irks me. If I see someone throwing garbage out of a window, it's just like, I would almost, you hate to say that you would execute someone, but there are certain things that just, it's unforgivable to an extent, because it shows not only laziness, but also how much you really care about your planet, the people around you, the whole 9 yards. But that sort of thing just really, it's making my skin crawl and my blood boil as I keep talking about it. But this scene here today with those gloves on the ground, it was enough to really set me off. I took a picture of it. I shared it on Facebook. And here's another thing with me. I'll admit that I've had some machinations of maybe at some point in my life I'll run for public office. I'm not going to be successful in that. I can tell you right now. While I am, I talked in the first segment there about how I consider myself to be a fairly level-headed person. There's stuff like this that will set me off, though. And if you gave me the access codes to those nuclear warheads, there might be an occasion to where I would use one of them on someone. And this person here, I probably would have. It's one of those deals to where I think natural selection, if it has any opportunity to pick someone out, that person should be it, because we don't need that in our gene pool going forward. We don't need that kind of attitude prevailing humanity as we move, hopefully, out of where we have been and into where we're going to be in the future, thanks to this scenario we're in right now. And the thought too, and this is, I applaud people who want to engage in using PPE, masks, gloves, whatever. If you feel like it's going to protect you, then that's all well and good. But here's the thing. The gloves are, in most cases, a terrible idea because guess what? There's a huge risk for cross-contamination. Because most of the people who are wearing them are not changing them frequently enough to prevent cross-contamination. And I'll give you a scenario that I encountered at one point that perfectly describes this. This happened it's been a good while back now when people were first starting to get the inclination, okay, well, we maybe ought to be masking up and whatnot. But I was going to, again, one of our local shops here. I had my mask. The gentleman that I saw, he had his mask on as well, so I was very confident in that. He was wearing a set of latex gloves, and I noticed that he was wearing them as he got out of his truck. Well, the two of us, our timing was pretty coincidental as we shopped that day, because not only did we go into the shop at about the same time, we also left at almost the same time. So he gets into his truck as he's leaving, and he's putting his bags and whatnot into the truck. And he's touching, his door handle on the truck. And then he starts to rifle with his keys, with his cell phone, touching the steering wheel, all while wearing the gloves that he wore into the store to push the buggy, to touch the inventory, to reach for his wallet, to touch the, keypad on the debit reader, whatever else. All that stuff is on those gloves at that point in time. Whatever he had before then, before he got to the shop, I didn't see him put the gloves on, so I'm assuming whatever he did before then, it was on there because he had them on. It's like, this is not doing any good. You're just spreading things around. And, maybe people don't understand that. Maybe it hasn't been put over to them that that's really a useless thing. Because people have said, well, the masks don't do anything. The masks, I have personal rights. I don't have to wear a mask. Whatever, dude, screw you. As I've put over here before, just wear the thing. Deal with it for a little bit of time so we can all hopefully overcome this thing and move on. But with, the masks help. The gloves, again, you're better off using hand sanitizer, washing your hands, keeping your hands away from your face and mouth and eyes and whatnot. It's just it's more of an opportunity to be cleanly by taking care of yourself and being hygienic than wearing gloves. They just don't help you that much, in my opinion. And I think the science is there as well in that regard. But this whole thing, it was so mind-numbingly painful to see that it set me off. And I was already having sort of a rough day from the argument I'd had with my wife, as I detailed in the first segment there, to where this was just like, I don't want to even go in here now. I wanted to get a nice steak, and now I want to put a steak into somebody's hellbound heart. To quote Bloody Hammers, if you're not familiar with the band Bloody Hammers, go listen to them sometime. They'll put you on your ear. But it was like, just don't be so stupid. Don't be this ignorant. people say, oh, well, when's COVID going to go away? When's this going to be done? I want to get back to my life. Guess what? It's never going to go away with you people acting like this. The masks were one thing, but you're leaving your PPE on the ground like this, you're creating a cesspool. You're creating an absolute cesspool for disease to breed and fester. It's just ridiculous. And I know, I feel like this episode has sort of gone off on the rails in terms of me harping about things. But honest to God, people have got to wise up and to smarten up, because this is going to go on forever. We're going to continue to be the laughingstock of the world in terms of countries like Japan and other parts of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, all these other places that have seemingly gotten a pretty good handle on this thing. Meanwhile, what are we doing? We're out here, we're having COVID parties because we want to see who can get infected first. Are you serious? You're really going to do something that dumb? I heard about stuff like that, and it just really, 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 really made me question humanity. And even worse now, we're getting to a point where people are having to decide what to do with their children in terms of schools opening back up and whatnot. And that's the absolute most crazy situation there could be, because you're having some people who are deciding potentially the fate of their child and saying, okay, well, you're going to go back to school here, little Jimmy. Oh, well, Mom, what about all this stuff they've talked about in the news? Oh, you'll be fine. They say children are much less prone to getting this than adults. But Mom, that doesn't apply to everybody. I'm sorry, Jimmy, but you have to go to school. What? This is where we are now? We're exposing our children to this thing willy-nilly? Come on. Let's try and do better. If we can, and I'm not saying, I understand people have to work. I understand people don't feel comfortable doing homeschooling, the whole thing there, but it is what it is. We are where we are. You've got to find some way of making a bit of a sacrifice. And, guess what? If that means talking to your employer about things, if that means maybe changing the dynamic of your job, whatever you've got to do to take care of your kid, then guess what? That's where you are. That's where we are. That's where my wife and I are. And we're doing it because we have to, because we love our child enough to protect him from the fucking virus. Or at least do as much as we can to protect him anyway. And you can help protect people too by not leaving your damn gloves on the ground. Or your masks or whatever. Just pick up your stuff. Put it in the garbage can. That was maybe the worst part of this whole scenario. It wasn't that I found a pair of gloves, in the road somewhere, or in the woods or whatnot around my house. It was literally like I could have balled these things up and chucked them into the trash can that was near to the front door at that grocery store. I could have thrown them away if I had been the one wearing them without moving. I could have just tossed them in the bin. It would have been fine. So the fact that this person stood there at the buggy return, unstrapped these gloves after pushing their buggy in, and just dropped them there, that was the worst part to me. That was just that. It's more than being an inconsiderate jerk. It's also being a lazy, inconsiderate jerk. It's just the combination of things. If you could all have karma and natural selection strike someone dead. For example, I'm recording this, as I mentioned, on a Friday night. There's actually a thunderstorm outside right now. If lightning could strike this person, I would say, karma, thank you very much. You exist, and you redheaded bitch, you've done your job. Thank you very much for taking this one out. That would have been great, in my opinion. But here I am exposing myself to reasons of why I'll never be put in elected office. Can't give me access to those nuclear codes there, folks. If they're at all within reach, or heaven forbid, state-sanctioned suicide. Heaven forbid, state-sanctioned assassination ever come back around during my watch, because I'd have a guy that'd be like, all right, just, we're going to sit you about 2 miles out. Just, it'll be fine. Just handle them. Just send it. Send it. Full send. There you go. Full send. You got access. Do it. That would be me. That'd be a reason why I couldn't ever hold public office for sure. But be that as it may, we're going to hopefully move on to something a little more entertaining with the third segment. We're going to get off of this toolbox or this soapbox, I should say, that I've been on here for a little bit. Going to talk about something else. I still might be on a soapbox. Maybe it'll be a different flavored soapbox, though. It's not going to be COVID related, and it's not going to be me talking about my personal relationships. So we'll talk here in a moment about a change that was made during this past week's episode of WWE Monday Night Raw. Be back in a few, folks. Stay tuned. Welcome back, gang. Glad that you are still with us, hanging out here on this episode of the Weekly Trim with yours, Beardly Redbeard. I always, I shouldn't say always, but when I started this program a long time ago, I said in describing it, okay, well, this one's not going to be wrestling heavy. Because most of my stuff, I'm the wrestling guy. I do a lot in regard to indie pro wrestling in the Carolinas, do the professional wrestling awards, all that stuff there. I didn't want this show to be real wrestling heavy because I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to talk about stuff outside of wrestling. And this was, my avenue to do that with the Weekly Trim podcast. But be that as it may, there are some things that I still have to take an opportunity to talk about. And, I will fully admit that I don't watch Raw or really SmackDown all that frequently anymore. I could not say that I've watched a full episode of either of those programs in at least a year. It's become very difficult for me to digest either one of them. And there's a number of reasons for that, not the least of which is the fact that since things have changed in terms of them not having live performances with fans and in arenas, it's become very difficult to consume those programs. Even though they've done a better job here recently of incorporating quote-unquote fans who are, trainees at the Performance Center, it's been very difficult to get into these shows. The talent that they're using these days, there's nothing wrong with most of these guys. Some of them are quite good. Seth Rollins, I'm a big fan of Drew McIntyre, who's the WWE champion at this point in time. You still have guys like Shinsuke Nakamura, Cesaro, AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy, Sheamus. That could rattle off all these names. I enjoy all these guys, but it's just there's something about the programming that is just doing nothing for me at this point in time. And it's no secret to anyone who follows the wrestling business that WWE as a whole, in terms of their viewership numbers, advertising numbers, it's all kind of in the tank at this point in time. And it's a situation where they seem to be grasping at straws. It's it's the spaghetti models where you get a bundle of pasta and you throw it at the wall, and you got to find something that sticks. Well, to me, everything's been tumbling down the wall because a lot of these ideas, a lot of these concepts that they've tried to put out there in terms of the creative aspect of professional wrestling have just been terrible. They're not interesting, and I don't want to lay that at the feet of the talent. I want to put that in the ballpark of the people who are okaying the direction of these characters that are these talent are tasked with trying to put over or get over. And there have been a number of things here recently that have just been they leave you shaking your head, where it's like, where did that even come from? How did you get to this point? And we had an example of that this past Monday on Raw as they debuted what's being referred to as Raw Underground, which, if you didn't see it, and based on the ratings numbers, most of you didn't, the Raw Underground segment, the big thing in terms of the presentation anyway, was the fact that suddenly here's Shane McMahon back doing something with the company. And, he's always been kind of the MMA guy when it comes to the family. He at one point was very much in with Dana White. He even tried to get his dad, to potentially buy UFC whenever it was for sale here a number of years ago. Could you imagine that? McMahon owning UFC, where that company would be right now? Whew, wow. But the idea of Shane just sort of reemerging suddenly to be the head of this thing is it's totally asinine in my opinion. It's like, okay, well, where's Shane been for the past number of months or whatever since he appeared at either WrestleMania or one of the Middle Eastern shows, wherever he was last? I couldn't even tell you where he was the last time he was on WWE programming. But for him to just suddenly come back, it's like, okay, well, I'm doing the hosting duties for this Raw Underground segment now. Okay, all right. Well, what is Raw Underground? Well, it appears to be some sort of a underground fight club style thing that they're doing, but not in a shoot style or a shoot sense to where it's actual combat. And that was what some of the dirt sheets were implying when they got wind of this thing. They said, oh, well, they're doing this shoot fight thing that they're calling Raw Underground, where they're actually having like MMA style contests and whatnot. And that was what got around in the dirt sheets, that they were in some way encouraging these actual fights between WWE talent. Not to say that WWE talent can't, engage themselves in fights or hold their own in fights, but it's like, these guys are trying not to hurt each other with everything that they do. And now you're introducing something to where it says, okay, you got to go hurt somebody. That was just plain dumb in terms of the concept of it. But then you actually see what this is, and very clearly, this is, of course, a gimmick. This is in no way, shape, or form a legitimate MMA-style contest. You can tell that immediately by virtue of the punches that some of these guys are throwing. Now, there's a concept in professional wrestling known as a worked shoot. Now, in describing that, in professional wrestling vernacular, a work is sort of the showmanship aspect of things, to where you're convincing someone this is happening in reality, when in reality it's just a show. That's what a work is. A shoot is considered actual reality. It is genuine. In some cases, a shoot has lots of different ways it can be portrayed, but typically a shoot is a actual fight. But a shoot can also be referred to as a legitimate job, or like someone's shoot name, like their real name, that kind of thing. Shoot has a lot of ways of being presented. But this was, Raw Underground was presented as being, a worked shoot, I should say, to where this is going to be a fight, but not really. And it just made the whole thing seem cheap, really and truly. My biggest problem with it was, you've got the known fact that WWE is this huge global company with literally every production asset they could ever hope to have in their employ. They can do whatever they need done within, a matter of hours probably. And yet you're going to try and convince me that they have some warehouse somewhere that they're going to run these little podunk fights out of. Now, there's the concept and the term outlaw mud show has become very popular in independent wrestling here within the past 2 years. That would be the perfect descriptor for what Raw Underground is. It is WWE's equivalent of a outlaw mud show, because you've got talent involved in this thing who are fully capable professional wrestlers, but they've been tasked with trying to do something that is really unnatural to them. And again, as I mentioned here a few moments ago, you could tell that by virtue of the punches they were trying to throw. You could really tell that by virtue of the camera angles that were used in trying to get this thing to be at all convincing, because they have the cameras, they have the camera where you're looking for one at the ring straight on. But then they have the camera in the crowd, which there's fans, quote unquote, around the ring. No one wearing masks and PPE, by the way, but they're around the ring, literally up to the railings of the ring itself. And it's like, how can we make this any more seedy or sleazy looking? Okay, here we go. Here's a couple of chicks from the local strip club. They're not doing anything right now anyway. They can't have actual lap dances here. We're going to put them on stage over here. And it's like, it feels like something that could have been in the Attitude Era almost, except this wouldn't have gotten over in the Attitude Era. There was something that they tried in the Attitude Era along these lines, and it failed horribly as well. And you probably know what I'm talking about if you followed professional wrestling for any length of time. That was the Brawl for It All, which has been wonderfully detailed on the Dark Side of the Ring program, which is on the Vice Network. I would strongly encourage you to check those programs out if you haven't seen them yet. But there's a lot of detail about Brawl for All in the episode of Dark Side of the Ring, so I'm not going to go over all the details there, but that was an actual boxing contest where they put wrestlers in the ring with gloves and said, all right, here, try and beat each other's brains in. And it was intended, even that, because it was one of those things again where it's like, all right, well, we're going to present this as legitimate fights, but we've got somebody in mind that we want to have win the whole thing. And it was intended to put over Dr. Death Steve Williams. Unfortunately, he got hurt. And then suddenly this thing became, all right, well, what do we do? What are we going to do? We started this thing. We can't stop. We have to go forward. And Bart Gunn winds up winning the whole thing, somewhat legitimately as well. And then they wind up having him fight Butterbean, and Butterbean beats his ass. It was all very terribly done and ridiculously done. And that's the same thing that happened here. The underground concept, I understand they're trying to put whatever they can into the business. They're trying to fill 3 hours of TV on every Monday night. But this is just insane, and it's ludicrous, really and truly, in terms of this being the best that they've got to work with and the best that they can come up with in terms of where Raw needs to be. It is really just disappointing. I'm hoping it disappears, because this is one of the things that's a recurring factor of some WWE gimmicks, is that if they get the inclination, okay, well, this isn't really working, we just need to let this go by the wayside. We're going to not mention it ever again, and people will just forget that it was ever there. It's like, the anonymous Raw general manager, where you had this thing that communicated via a laptop, or more recently you had the SmackDown hacker, which people were saying, "Oh, this is how we reintroduce CM Punk to WWE," and that in and of itself was a terribly ludicrous statement, but this, the concept of the hacker, it was something that had not really been done before. I was interested in seeing where it went. There was, the common belief was that unless something really crazy happened to where Punk did actually come back, the concept was believed to be a re-entry point for Mustafa Ali, who was a great talent, great wrestler. But it just disappeared. They stopped mentioning it. And it's probably never going to be heard from again. Why? It was going pretty well. You had something decent that was, a means to an end there. But nope, poof, gone. Now we have Raw Underground. Likewise, we have what I'm assuming it's a stable anyway. I think they're calling them Retribution. It's these guys, of course, in black hoodies who they attacked a generator at the Performance Center. They threw, I guess it was supposed to be like a Molotov cocktail at this generator. Of course, most of them are wearing wrestling boots and tights, so it's like, all right, well, it shouldn't be that difficult to figure out who it is, because, they're wearing what they are. So, yeah. But it's one of these things where when you watch the show and you hear about what's going on, as a wrestling fan who wants things to be great, to be something that you could look forward to, it's like, I just can't. I really can't look forward to WWE programming anymore. All Elite Wrestling, they've got some interesting things going on there. I will also say that NXT, they have some pretty cool stuff. Keith Lee is an awesome champion. I followed him for a long time. I'm glad to see him having success with the NXT brand as well there. But with the main WWE roster and the main brands, it's something's got to give. Something has got to give, and something has got to change. Hopefully, at some point here, if things can ever get back to where we can have live shows again, it'll start to improve when these guys can get back in front of legitimate audiences. I think that's hurt them more than anything, is the removal of the audience, because they no longer have that real legit measuring stick to say, okay, this worked with these fans, this did not. Right now, it's just, they can do whatever they want to because they're in their own little universe. The WWE universe doesn't exist right now. They're their own universe. Terrible way of putting things. But hopefully it'll improve. Hopefully it'll get better. We can only, as fans, we can only hope that it will progress from where it is, because it really can't continue to go downhill. It really can't. So we will hope and pray for the future of professional wrestling, or specifically as it relates to that of the WWE product anyway. Folks, we're going to take another break here, listen to some music, and then we're going to wrap things up with a very special edition of What's Redbeard Drinking. I'm looking forward to this one because it's something that I found on YouTube and that I am very much looking forward to trying. It's going to take a little bit of prep, though. So I'll get that ready. We'll we'll listen to some tunes, and we'll be back to round out the program with another incarnation of What's Redbeard Drinking. Be back in a few, folks. Stay tuned.
Empty, pointing every finger at me, waiting like a stocking brother, blew upon her fingers rest, glitter now the path of must we, just because the sun has come. Jesus, why won't you whistle something bad the past has done? Jesus, why won't you whistle something bad the past has done? Why can't we not be sober? Just want to stop this over. Why can't we drink forever? Just want to stop this. Oh, just a worthless liar, I am just an imbecile. I will only complicate you, trust in me and fall as well. I will find a center in you, I will chew it up and leave. I will work to elevate you, just enough to bring you down. Mother Mary, won't you whisper something by the past is dead? Mother Mary, won't you whisper something that the past has done? Why can't we not be sober? Just want to stop this over. Why can't we drink forever? Just want to stop this. Oh,
Welcome back, everybody. We are rounding out another episode of the Weekly Trim here on the Rasslin Redbeard YouTube channel and all of our affiliates as well. Anchor.fm, Spotify, all those good sites that you can now find this here podcast, not only in video form, but also in traditional audio formats. We're excited right now, or at least I'm excited. I hope you're excited. Are you excited? You should be, because we're going to enjoy a beverage, and I am quite parched right now. I want to give you a little bit of background on this because this is dissimilar from what we've done in the past, where typically, I pull something off the shelf and it's, a relatively new thing that I might have found at one of our local purveyors of adult beverages. This is something different. I will, by no stretch of the imagination, claim to be a mixologist or anything resembling that. I did take a mixology course on a cruise ship one time. I did. I made some very tasty drinks on that cruise ship there, including one that was a cinnamon toast crunch shot. Yes, if you ever want to have a shot that tastes like cinnamon toast crunch, just mix about equal parts rum chata and Fireball cinnamon whiskey. It comes out tasting just like cinnamon toast crunch. It's delicious. My wife didn't like it because she's not a big fan of Fireball, but I loved it. I could probably drink a coffee cup size glass of it, and it would be just fine by me. But that's just me. In my travels and in all the various things I've encountered on YouTube and whatnot, I think most people, will admit to having seen something from a channel like The Tipsy Bartender. Everybody knows The Tipsy Bartender. But there are lots of other mixology channels out there as well. And one that I've gotten to really appreciate is How to Drink. It's just if you look up on YouTube, How to Drink, you'll find this channel. It's been around for a good little while there. He does a great job in terms of not only giving his take on traditional cocktails and whatnot, but also crafts some stuff that's all unique to himself. Like he's done a number of shows based around drinks that are found in, for example, video games or movies. He did the Six Demon Bag, or tried to, from Big Trouble in Little China. He did, the Wake Up Juice from Back to the Future Part 3. He's done a lot of cool stuff over there on How to Drink, so definitely give him a follow, and if you're at all into making drinks and whatnot. But by virtue of encountering stuff like his show and others, I found a lot of videos of this, I'm assuming some type of a bar in the tequila region of Mexico, that it's astounding because they make this one specific drink, and it's a huge thing that they do there. But, well, let me rephrase. They have a huge version of it because they have like the single serving version of these things, and then they have one they make that's about the size of a 5-gallon paint bucket. It may be even larger than that. It's a huge clay pot, and these things are called Cantaritos. Forgive me for being a white boy trying to pronounce something that's not at all in my vernacular, but Cantaritos are really just something that set me on my ear, because I'm like, I could do that, or I could try to do that anyway here in this setting, and I could make something that might be really cool and enjoyable to drink. So what I've done is to watch a couple of those videos, actually a lot of those videos of the guys there at that bar making these things, and I've tried to gather most of the ingredients. I will admit I don't have all of the ingredients that go into this drink. Now, what is this drink? Cantarito, if you're wondering, is sort of defined as being a tequila-based highball paloma-like cocktail served in a clay cup known as a jarrito that helps keep the drink cold. It can contain ingredients such as agave, lemon juice, lime juice, grapefruit juice, orange juice, sea salt, and grapefruit soda, or lemonade or limeade. So that said, I have tried to replicate this drink here. Now, I rattled off those ingredients there. I did not have, agave was not in the mixture that I saw there, but lemon juice, lime juice, grapefruit juice, orange juice, sea salt, I was all able to incorporate. Grapefruit soda, I don't have. It said lemonade or limeade. I'm not going to go those routes because I think that there's something to the soda aspect of this that may add a little something to it. So to give an approximation of the squirt soda is what's typically used in this thing, I have decided to go with Sprite, which is it's about the closest approximation that we're going to find here in little South Carolina. I will admit to never having seen squirt out in the wild. I don't know if it even has ever been really carried here domestically in the United States. I'm sure it is available in Spanish American markets and whatnot, but we don't have one of those here, unfortunately. So I've got Sprite. I've got the rest of the ingredients in sort of a tumbler that I'm going to mix here, and I'm going to add the Sprite as sort of a top off. Then I'm going to give it a little bit of a stir to get everything incorporated, and we're going to see what this tastes like. I'm very much looking forward to this because it is a lot of fresh ingredients. You have juices in here, and the tequila choice I'll mention as well was Patron. That was sort of the selection that I made from our local liquor store because of the fact that they had some jars of tequila that were much larger than the Patron, and I didn't want to invest $40 in a bottle of tequila that I might not drink all that frequently. So I went with a Patron based more on that than anything else and I do like Patron. Patron's nice. So I'm going to mix this up a little bit. Then I'm going to add in the Sprite. And we're going to give this a taste here. But first, I've got the majority of and you can hear me rattling it around here because I've got some ice in the tumbler here as well. This has a very pleasant color, very much a citrus juice color here so far. And the aroma is, of course, that of most of the juices because the Patron is, I won't say sort of a back note at this point in time, but you can sense it in there when you get your nose right over into the jar. But it's not been incredibly prevailing because Patron is much more smooth anyway in terms of a lot of tequila. So I'm going to mix this up. Not going to do it too vigorously there because I don't want the ice to begin to break down and dilute this very much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this into a glass, and we're going to see what we have here. I'm going to leave a little bit of room up at the top. I'm not going to pour the entire thing in there because I'm going to leave some room at the top in order to top this off with the Sprite that we have here. At least give it a little bit of a spritz or a freshen up here. And there's the Sprite coming alive. Good old fizzy Sprite. I'll top this off here now. Oh yeah, that's really got a pleasant color to it because again, it's retained the fruit juice colors that were prevalent in the original mix. It's got kind of a opaque orange to pink shade going on there to it. I'm going to give this a little bit of a stir with my trusty straw here so we can get everything all incorporated, and then we will go in for a bit of a sense with the old nose to see what's going on here. Give it a good nice little stir there to get and the effervescence of the Sprite I think is going to add a lot to this. I think this is going to be really good, or at least I'm hoping it is anyway. So let's give it a sniff test here, get the sense of the aromatics. Wow. I mentioned that the tequila was kind of a back note there, but it's very prevalent in the aromatics of this. That's interesting. I kind of expected the orange juice and the grapefruit juice to stand firm in being very prevalent in the aromatics here, but it's definitely got a nose of tequila there. Wow! So it has that, you get the sense almost of this being not too far removed from being something along the lines of a margarita in terms of the aromatics there as well. So all right. This is going to be a thing. I'm a little bit nervous because I hope it's good. I want it to be good, but I just don't know what's going to happen here because I've never had this before, never have tried anything like this before. So here we go. Our taste of a Cantarito. Oh goodness. I think I've created something dangerous here, folks. This is delicious. The sense that you get up front is the flavor of the tequila. The juices are very refreshing and very present there in terms of setting your taste buds up really to get all of the flavors combined there, because the acidity of the juices just, it really sets your mouth not on fire, but it really sets your mouth up to say, oh, this is really an intense flavor combination. And it is. It's very similar, as I was describing a moment ago, to a margarita. It has a lot of the same flavor combinations. The addition of the Sprite, I would like to see what this tastes like with the traditional squirt soda in there, because I feel like that would change this a good bit, because Squirt is a grapefruit flavored soda, as I understand. Sprite, of course, is lemon lime flavored, so there's a bit of a different combination there. But still, the effervescence of the soda in combination with the juices, man, this is really something else. And that little bit of salt. And you see, this is one of the things, too. In some of the recipes, like, I think my serving here is right on the money in terms of the amount of salt I put in this, because I saw some of the amounts of salt they were putting in some of the drinks as they were mixing them, and some of their jars that they put these things in must be much bigger than what I'm working with, because the amount of salt they had in some of those things seemed like a lot. And the amount of salt I've got in this is just present enough to give you that, because salt, people think all this bad stuff about sodium and whatnot, and that's true, but salt, when used properly, is a flavor intensifier, and that's really what it's done here. So in combination with the acidity of the juices, the salt really brings everything forward with you. And you, of course, get a little bit of the flavor of the salt there as well. It's important that you use something like a kosher or a sea salt in this. You don't want to use table salt, and, of course, not like iodized salt, because that would be totally dumb. It will be. It sounded like I said it was going to be totally dumb, but it would be totally dumb, because those salts don't have the ability to really register the way a kosher or a sea salt can. Wow, I'm just really impressed with this, and really super happy that I chose to make this, because it really is a fantastic beverage. I'm going to go in for another drink here and see if we can pull anything else out of the flavor notes and flavor profile. Here we go, one more taste of our Cantarito. I tell you, talk about a refreshing drink. Sprite already is a very refreshing beverage. So when you mix it with these fruit juices and the tequila and the salt, this, it almost has the registry of potentially being something like a sports drink in a way. I know that's weird to say, but really and truly, this could be almost like if you wanted to say a boozy Gatorade type flavor, this could be it, because Gatorade has that little bit of salinity to it in order to put that back into your bloodstream and whatnot. But man alive, this is just really super awesome. I'm really impressed with this, and I'm super glad that I took the opportunity to make this, because this is an example of something to where, you can't be afraid to try something new. And this is really just proof of that, because coming into this, I had zero idea of what this was going to be. But man alive, I'm really super stoked that I've made this, because this is going to become a mainstay for me now. This is really good, and I'm really impressed with how it came together. Wow, I really, really, really like this. And it's going to make me, next time, if Lord willing, we're able to go on a cruise and go somewhere south of the border, I'm going to ask for this. I'm going to see if they can actually make one, and it be really indicative of the true experience with the Squirt and everything else that they do, because this, what I've made, is really super awesome. I think I enjoy this a lot. I think you will too, if you enjoy flavors like this. If you like a margarita, definitely give this a shot. If you like, like I say, tequila, margarita, traditional drinks that come from our friends south of the border and whatnot, this will be right up your alley. Super, super, super drink. And it's got me set for a super, super evening here, because I'm going to grill some steaks, and I'm going to have a good time watching maybe some movies here late into the evening, and probably do some laundry and other stuff like that as well, because I just do things like that late at night on the weekends. I'm an adult. I don't have machinations of going to clubs and doing stupid stuff like that. I do laundry. I watch movies. I make drinks like this and enjoy myself. That's what being an adult is like, and at least for me anyway. So, folks, we appreciate you joining us here on the program. Thank you for tuning in. Please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff that us YouTubers and online personalities are supposed to beg you for. Please remember to engage in all those if you choose to. It's been a good one, folks. Till next time, I'll meet you further on up the road.